Hello fellow Jeepers. Today we will be replacing the thermostat on a 1995 Jeep Wrangler 2.5 liter 4-cylinder. As you can see, looks like it had been replaced at one time or another. The reason I'm replacing this is because I have a high idle condition. It's really kind of odd to say that I'm replacing the thermostat and the water temperature sensor for a high idle condition, but all other sensors have been replaced except the O2 sensor. I replaced the TPS, the idle air control, the IAT. Those have all been replaced. Throttle body has been removed and cleaned thoroughly. So the next step, simply because I have read other people have done this and it seems to have cured the condition. Jeep runs great, absolutely fine. The only issue is it seems to run too cold, and from my understanding that even the 4 cylinders, just like the 4.0 straight 6s, these need to run a little warm. Other than that, let's get busy. Before I break off on the camera, one of the first things you want to do is we got to get this thermostat housing off. Very simple. And by the way, I will be replacing the whole entire housing. It was only 15 bucks. The water temperature sensor, I think that was like 10 bucks. But anyway, you only have this wire for the sensor, water temperature sensor. You have this clamp, that bolt, and another one underneath. So there's only 2 bolts. I have a new gasket for it as well. This shouldn't take too awfully long, so I'll get back to you in a minute. Let's get removing these bolts. Okay, we have the hose clamps undone, the water temperature sensor undone. Bolts are broke loose, not seized, which is a good thing. Next step is finish getting her off. Let's get her done. Holy tamale, guys, take a look at that. That thing is just nasty. Don't know how long that thermostat's been in there, but it's definitely due for a replacement. We're gonna try and nasty old gasket. Let's see if we can grab a hold of that. By the way, kind of a part that I skipped, what you want to do is go ahead and drain your radiator down to where it's below that level. Kind of skip that step, but what you do is you release the petcock on the bottom of the radiator, take your radiator cap off, drain that down some. If your fluid's clean, I mean, you know, certainly go ahead and reuse it, but now might be a good time to consider flushing your system out after this. But that is just plain nasty. Let's see if we can get her out of there. Oh, there she comes. Okay. That is just nasty. Alright, let's get busy cleaning this up and so we can start putting this thing back together. Be back with you in a minute. Okay guys, here's the old old thermostat. As you can see, it looks a little bit cleaner now that I've been able to wipe it off, but what you might want to do, just check when you take out the old one. On the bottom, I don't know if I can get it to, that's a little bit better. On the bottom, it'll tell you the degrees. This is a 195, which is what I got for a replacement, which means that once that water temperature reaches up to 195 degrees, that thermostat will open up and allow the coolant back in through the engine. Again, doesn't look too bad. I cleaned it up, of course, but not sure what exactly is going on. Might actually clean this up a little bit more and put it in a pan of boiling water, just so I can test it, see if it's doing what it's supposed to do. At 195 degrees, that valve should open up. Man, I keep saying sorry about that, guys. So the next step is to finish cleaning this up. Get a view of it here. And as you can see, it's pretty nasty, so we're gonna get busy cleaning up the surfaces and stuff so we can mount the new housing gasket, put everything back together. We'll finish getting that old housing off. We'll go ahead and clean all that stuff up and put it on the Jeep part shelves in case of emergency. That way we have another one in case I have to swap it out again some future time. I'll have parts ready to go. I'll also test the water temperature sensor. By the way, this is a 2-wire. I know some are a little bit different, but that's a 2-wire on the 95, 2.5 liter 4-cylinder. Boy, that's some nasty stuff. Anyway, I'm going to get busy, clean this up, and be back with you in a minute. Okay, I don't know how you other driveway mechanics, YouTubers do this, but holding the camera and trying to record is obviously a tedious process. Need to maybe invest in a better camera or start using my GoPro. But as you can see, the object here is to get this surface all cleaned up. So this is probably the most tedious, time-consuming part of it all. It's just nasty. So the object is get her cleaned up. We'll have to wipe her down and spray it up with some brake cleaner. Get that all cleaned up. So I'll get back at it and get right back to you. Okay, we got the housing the rest of the way off. I figure I'd just throw in a quick clip right here. Say that 10 times over. Quick clip, quick clip. Anyway, there's the water sensor, as you can see. The inside there. Pretty nasty. The housing should still be good. Hell, the sensor might even be good if I clean it up, but I'm not wasting time. I just got new. The parts are really inexpensive. The housing, I think, was 15 bucks. The sensor was like 10 bucks. The housing came with a new gasket. Anyway, I'll show you here. We'll get back to cleaning her up. One of the most tedious steps is getting that area all cleaned up and getting that old gasket material off of there. There we go. Now it's more focused. But I'll get back to you. We'll get this cleaned up and move forward and get the new one on. That's all to it. Easy peasy. Okay guys, just jumping around again. Here's the old housing. I just wanted to make a note. I know I've done really stupid things in the past for sure. By no means am I perfect in any way, but one of the things you might want to take note of is the short bolt goes on the bottom hole and the long bolt goes on the top hole. Again, this is the old housing, and we're still cleaning things up. Using a little bit of CRC brake cleaner. Always helps get the grease and grime off of everything before you put it back together. Let's take a look at what we have here. Alright, we're getting there. We're almost cleaned up. A few more minutes to go, and we'll take the next step and start getting everything ready to put back together. Be back with you in a minute. One thing to take note of on this too, I wanted to mention that some of the tools that you're going to need is a 3/4 inch deep well socket to get that water temperature sensor out if you're reusing it. Pair of channel locks, extensions. The bolts, I believe, are 13mm. Basically, that's it. We're gonna start putting together the water temperature sensor and the new unit. Of course, it's all clean because it's brand new. Get some RTV sealing on there and start putting things back together. Again, that's a 3/4 inch deep well socket, pair of channel locks, maybe a screwdriver. Shouldn't need an extension. You don't have to take off anything to do this job. You don't have to take off the idler pulley. You don't have to pull the belt or anything. You can get in there and get things done relatively easy without removing a bunch of other accessories. So, time to find the torque wrench and start putting things back together. Be back in a second. Okay, she's about as clean as I'm gonna get her for right now. I'm gonna get the new housing, scuff up the surface, mount the sensing unit, and be right back with you. Okay guys, here's the new housing unit along with the gasket, some Permatex RTV sealer, new radiator cap, new sending unit, and new thermostat. Even though the sending unit has some sealer already on it, I'm going to go ahead and put like one wrap of Teflon on it just to alleviate any leaks or anything like that. The housing unit, I will, like I just mentioned, I will scuff that up a little bit, but it's pretty much ready to go. And right there is where the sending unit's going to go in. So let me start getting this all together, and I'll be back with you in a second. And there's the new sending unit, all mounted in the housing. Like I said, I did put a wrap of Teflon sealer on there, even though there's sealer already on there. Just want to ensure no leaks. Gasket, Permatex, new thermostat, and new radiator cap. Here is the new housing unit. As you can see, the sensor in there. You want to make sure that you don't torque it down too far to where it's hitting inside of that housing, because that's how they get cracked. Again, that's the as I mentioned earlier, that's a 2-prong water temperature sensor. I have seen some that were a little bit different. So we're getting ready here to put this thing all back together and get it fired up and see what she does for the high idle condition. Okay, I left out putting the Permatex on. It's kind of a messy job with the camera and trying to do everything. I'm going to try and move to my GoPro for future videos and see how they come out. But what I did was I spread a thin layer of the gasket sealer on there and mounted the gasket on the housing. It's better than doing it outside in the cold. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and flip this up, put a little bit of pressure on there, let that set up for a few minutes. Everything looks pretty good. Get ready to put this thing all back together and get her fired up. So be back with you in a minute. Okay guys, I got the surface and everything all cleaned up, and as you can see I got the thermostat mounted in there. Put a little bit of Permatex around the edge to keep it in place. I'm going to let that set up for about 15-20 minutes or so. Take note of the angle of the thermostat. I don't know if this is necessary, but if you take a note of the housing, the way the water inlets and outlets go, I position the thermostat so it gets a little bit more flow at that angle into the thermostat. Again, I don't know if this is necessary or not, but I felt that placing that thermostat at an angle like that gives a little bit more opening to the flow of the coolant. Man, I keep saying again. Sorry, I'm trying to get better at these YouTube videos. I think what I'll do is I'll let that sit up for about 15-20 minutes, and then I'll go ahead and get the housing mounted up. While I'm waiting, I did clean up the mounting bolts a bit. They were pretty gunked up with oil and grease and things like that. Those are, as mentioned earlier, 13mm bolts. Not sure of the length. What I'll do is I will post a list of all the part numbers that I used. I got all my parts from O'Reilly's. Shout out to O'Reilly's for offering a military discount. One of the reasons that I get the majority of my parts at O'Reilly's or AutoZone, I do get occasional parts online. I'm a little iffy on purchasing some of those parts from eBay or Amazon, but I guess it depends on the part that I'm replacing. So let me give you a little shot of the bolts. Again, I cleaned those up. That way they go in there a little bit easier and they're not all messy and gunked up. There's the old thermostat and the old housing and things. I'm going to go ahead and clean them up and put them on the part shelf in case I ever need it for future or emergency purposes. They may be reusable. What's in question is that sensor, that water temperature sensor right there. Other than that, I mean, besides being all dirty and gunked up and everything like that, those parts may be reusable. So I'm going to go ahead and save them. I'll get back to you in a minute as we start putting this stuff back together. Okay, and we're back. As you can see, I got the housing mounted. Everything's tightened up. Unfortunately, I can't find my 3/8 torque wrench. So I'm going to have to do with snugging them up the best I could. The hardest part about this whole housing was getting that bolt in. Not really, yeah, it's difficult. I suggest putting the bolt in the housing before you put it down there and start lining it up to get the bolt in. Makes it a lot easier. The rest of it's pretty straightforward stuff. I'll be back with you in a minute. Okay, she's back together. I'm going to let it sit up for about 20 minutes or so and let that Permatex set in. It's a little cold out, so hopefully it sets up okay. I feel confident. I don't feel like I'll have any leaks. Everything looks good. And we'll give you the follow-up here shortly. Okay, Jeepers, this is it. Everything's snugged up. Radiator cap's been replaced. Reservoir's been topped off. We're going to start her up. Hopefully we don't have any leaks. I started a few minutes ago, and I think the hose clamp wasn't quite tight. I did have one drip. Let's start her up and see what happens.